Where does the rocket go? How far away does it land? Will it touch down in a location where you can easily recover it? These are the answers that you can get using the Launch Visualizer. It is an app on the RockSim website, and you can test it out right now for free. Finally, you have a way to simulate your rockets that gives you the true information that you need to be successful. And the best part is that you don't have to walk after your rocket after it comes back down to the ground. Experience the fun. Test your rockets right now at RockSim.com. Most rocketeers seem satisfied with just being told how high their rocket flew, and that's a shame. How did the rocket get to that point? That is what you should really be concerned about. The story of your rocket's flight is just not a peak altitude number. The real story is the trajectory path that your rocket takes during the flight. Does it go straight up or does it arc over? Does it spin as it ascends? What happens once the recovery system is deployed? Where does the rocket go? How far away does it land? Will it touch down in a location where you can easily recover it? These are the answers that you can get using the Launch Visualizer. It is on the RockSim.com website. You can test it out right now for free. Finally, you have a way to simulate your rockets that gives you the true information that you need to be successful. And the best part is that you don't have to walk after your rocket back down to the ground. Experience the fun. Test your rockets right now at RockSim.com. Most rocketeers seem satisfied with just being told how high their rocket flew, and that's a shame. How did the rocket get to that point? That is what you should really be concerned about. The story of your rocket's flight is just not a peak altitude number. The real story is the trajectory path that your rocket takes during the flight. Does it go straight up or does it arc over? Does it spin as it ascends? What happens once the recovery system is deployed? Where does the rocket go? How far away does it land? Will it touch down in a location where you can easily recover it? These are the answers that you can get using the Launch Visualizer. It is an app on the RockSim.com website, and you can test it out right now for free. Finally, you have a way to simulate your rockets that gives you the true information that you need to be successful. And the best part is that you don't have to walk after your rocket after it comes back down to the ground. Experience the fun. Test your rockets right now at RockSim.com. Most rocketeers seem satisfied with just being told how high their rocket flew, and that's a shame. How did the rocket get to that point? That is what you should really be concerned about. The story of your rocket's flight is just not a peak altitude number. The real story is the trajectory path that your rocket takes during the flight. Does it go straight up or does it arc over? Does it spin as it ascends? What happens once the recovery system is deployed? Where does the rocket go? How far away does it land? It's 2 o'clock and we have to say hello. And we're live. My name is Tim Van Milligan and hopefully this is coming through. I'm looking at the microphone and it looks like the microphone is working. So if it's not, let me know. Okay, so this is RockSim Live. I have got multiple systems going on here. I got my Windows computer. I got a Mac computer over here, which is not hooked up. It just allows me to see the chat. I got a monitor here that I can see. I don't really need that monitor since I'm watching the chat over here, but it tells me if my microphone's working. Cool. What a day it is today. Today is Friday, March 24th, 2023. I got to talk about this. This big old rocket right here is the level 2. Let me turn it around. Oh, I hit the back screen. There's the level 2 rocket. This is coming out next Tuesday. It's a 54 millimeter diameter, high power rocket. I got to fly it this past weekend, and man, did I have a great time. I flew it twice, just to make sure everything was working fine, and it worked beautiful, straight as an arrow. It's a 54 millimeter, so it's a high power, but you can fly it with adapters, and I know people are going to ask, can you fly it with an H? Yeah, it's going to be a high thrust H, but you can do it. Because it's kind of heavy. It's about 7 pounds because it's all fiberglass. From the fins all the way up to the nose cone is all fiberglass. So it's strong, but fiberglass is heavy. So, but I am so excited. This is coming out next Tuesday, the 28th. Let me share my desktop. And let me bring up a browser so I can show you what, I think I can see it. Let's go to Apogee website. Our website is apogeerockets.com. And I don't know, level 2. It's not showing up here. But it is, the page is on our website, it's just hidden. And I would have to make it live. I could actually do that because I got my other computer over here. Let's see how long it takes me to do it. I have to log in. Type in level 2. And let's turn it to make it active. All right. It should be active here in just 1 second. All right, let's try it again. Let's try doing level 2 again. There it is. Look at that. So if you just type in level -2 here in the search bar, you'll find the web page for it. Yeah, so this is what it looks like, which I just showed you. And if you click on it here, this was last Saturday. I was out in Pueblo getting ready to launch this thing. You can see there was some snow on the ground. There was fresh snow in the mountains. And it was just a little bit above freezing, but I took my jacket off so I could take a picture. But there was like no wind, so it didn't feel cold because the wind wasn't blowing. It was a beautiful, beautiful blue sky, and it took off just straight as an arrow, went really high. And it's a dual deployment. You can fly it single deployment or dual deployment, and I flew it dual deployment both times. So it has an 18-inch drogue chute and a 58-inch main chute. Has the parachute protectors are orange shock cord. And a different view, that's the parachute. Another view of it on the launch pad. This is what the eBay looks like. It's all fiberglass. I redesigned the eBay from the original kit. It used to be made by Mad Cow, now it's going to be made by us. So that's what it looks like, and that's when I put all my electronics in it. I used a redundant altimeter, so I had an old Perfect Flight here and an Altus Metrum Easy Mini right there. Just so I had redundancy when I flew it. You don't have to. It was just something that I wanted to do. I wanted to test my altimeters to make sure they're all working. You can see all the parts there. Fiberglass tubes that are pre-slotted and pre-drilled. It's a filament wound nose cone. Again, pre-slotted. Has vinyl decals, so it looks really great, and they're clear. These little stripes, if they weren't clear, they would be really hard to put on. So we made them clear. That's the recovery system, parachute protectors, the fins. There's the eBay sled. We're using lifting eye nuts to make it lighter weight and easier to put together and take apart. Again, fiberglass rings, all kinds of good hardware, good rail buttons, 1010 rail buttons. Here's the nose tip. It's a resin tip. They use just a little bit of CA and it just glues right on top. You're not going to knock it off. because it's so short. They can't wind the nose cone because it's filament wound, so they put it on a lathe and then they wind it around, and they can't go all the way to the very tip because then the filament would drop off. So that's what that looks like. Here's the instruction sheet, and close up of the instruction. Another parachute, eBay, another launch photo. I think I had a video on here of them winding the nose cone. I thought I put it on here. Maybe I haven't done it yet. I still got to do a couple of things to get ready, but the kit's ready. It's going out on Tuesday. It has printed instructions, but I redid all the videos from the old level 2 because we redesigned it and made it better. So there's 18 videos. Yeah, so these are from the old version. They're still good, but now they're updated and they'll be even better. But we're not here to talk about the level 2, even though I am so excited about it. It just flew so beautiful. I wish you could have been there. We're here to talk about RockSim. So if you go to the homepage of Apogee Rockets, so it's apogeerockets.com, you scroll down and here's the RockSim live training. That's what we're doing right now. This is live, and I need to make sure that I'm getting to the comments. Oh yeah, we got a lot of people talking about it. We got Terry Wheelock. He says, does it have the kitchen sink? No, but it has most everything. It doesn't have the electronics, but it's a great rocket. Tom Goudreau is here from Virginia. Sturk03, Carlos K from Marietta, Georgia. Newtons per second from Massachusetts. Okay, good. So this is RockSim Live, and we're on episode 113 today. This will we'll update this. This was what we talked about last week on the 17th. How to add rail buttons and all kinds of good stuff. So you can see that, and there's timestamps in the videos in case you want to watch them again. If you've never had RockSim before, just go to How To and Guides, come down here to Software, and you can download a free trial right here. There's frequently asked questions. The RockSim live training, again, this is what we're doing right now. There's also video tutorials, more formal videos. What we're here for today is to answer your questions. And I had 2 questions that came in via email, and I didn't want to forget about those. So the first one was, they're both about drag. I have to go to my email over here. And the first one was from Carlos, and he asked, do tail cone shapes matter to RockSim? He says, if weights are equal, does any RockSim variant gives different simulated flight outcomes for tail cones versus simple paper cones versus parabolas or ogive? Okay, so this is a question about drag, and whenever a question comes up about drag, I always have to give a caveat, and the caveat is that RockSim is not a drag prediction program. So if you're wondering, is a tail cone that's ogive shaped versus a conical shape, is it going to be a big difference or a significant difference? And the answer is no. So that answers your question, Carlos. RockSim is more of a trajectory program. If you already have the coefficient of drag, it can give you a better trajectory of that rocket. But you have to know the coefficient of drag first. RockSim will try to estimate the coefficient of drag, but it's not as accurate as you want it to be. And it's just because figuring out coefficient of drag is so hard. Even NASA has a hard time doing it. That's why they still build wind tunnels and they fly things in the wind tunnel, and that's why they build prototypes before they go into production. It's just because they got to verify everything, and one of those is coefficient of drag. And coefficient of drag is not a single number. It depends on a lot of things, like the speed of the rocket, the angle of attack, the shape. Is there a lot of interference, kind of like turbulence coming off of other parts that affects the part that you're interested in, like on a boat tail? By the time the flow gets to the boat tail, it's probably already turbulent. And so turbulent is different from laminar flow error. It's just so hard to predict all that. So that kind of answers the question. And his second question is, if we manage to measure drag differences in shape somehow, is there a place in RockSim where we can put the coefficient of drags per part? And the answer is no, not per part. You can do an overall drag coefficient, and that gets to the second question that we had, but it's not per part. So if you wanted to do an overall drag coefficient, it's right here under CD override in RockSim. You just hit that tab. We have this rocket right here, and then you have the CD for the sustainer alone, and then you have CDs for other parts, like booster stages. So it's not a single part, but it's a set of components, like a booster stage. Because as parts drop off of your rocket, then you need to adjust the coefficient of drag. And I was just thinking about a thought I had for a new feature. And all of a sudden, how to add the feature, it just visualized in my head. So that was cool, Carlos. You just kind of triggered me with a new idea. We have newtons per second, who is also here, I believe. Let me double check. Yep, he's here from Massachusetts. And he writes, I need help with manually adjusting the CD override. So that's this right here. I built a custom rocket Jupiter 3 and he sent it to me, and that's what it looks like. So if we go here to Rocket Design Attributes, let's give it a name, Jupiter 3. And that is in article number 564 of your newsletter and secured my level 2 certification. So he's saying that this is in our number 564 of our newsletter. So if you go to the Apogee website and go to how-to and guides and come down to Peak of Flight newsletter, and he says it's in issue number 564. So as you click on all newsletters, then scroll down. I'm looking for 564. And I am looking for the Jupiter 3 rocket. Okay, so it might be that one there, because I don't recall. And just looking for the name Jupiter 3 as I'm scrolling through this. Let me scroll back up. All right, it's written by Joshua Drummond. Joshua didn't send me a photo of himself. He lives in Massachusetts. Coincidence with the Newton thrust for newtons per second. We have Chuck Garnes here and Rosa from Ottawa. Okay, so let me get back to the RockSim and then get back to the email over here. I got to make this smaller. Okay. He secured his level 2 certification with this rocket, so that's cool. That's a big rocket. It's 7.75 inches in diameter and a mass of 10,226 grams. So this thing's heavy. And it's simulated, RockSim simulated it to 850 feet with the CD override unchecked using 0.75 sustainer value. And if I check the CD override and let the program calculate, the CD value jumps it to 1,000 feet. Let me look at his flight simulations. So the first one, he said 850 feet. So I'm looking for 850 feet in here. He's got a lot of simulations. Let's start at the bottom and work up. Anything that's close. Okay, here's 884 feet. J435. That's not a J435. Or is it, yeah, J435? He's got a J453. There's a 435. Okay. So let's load that engine. One new motor mounts were found in the current design. These have been added to the simulation. All right, let's see what happened. Okay, so I think what happened is, see, this is his engine mount tube here, and I think he's got an adapter in it so he can fly the J435. Okay, so let's fly it with a J435. I'm just looking. He's got a big long text here. Okay, so he's got a 38 millimeter adapter, and he's got a J435, and cancel out of that because I know that's not a. It's maybe a 38. J435, so that is a 38. Okay. I'm just trying to get the lay of the land here. So the flight events, let me cancel out of here. Let me hit edit. When you go to edit, then you can see what parameters he had in here. So he had the parachute deploying at max ejection delay, and he's got a P engine here. So that's not going to eject at all, because P means plugged, which means there's no ejection charge. So that means that the rocket is just going to crash, but we're just looking for altitude, so that's okay. And we're just running it on the computer, so it's not going to break the rocket. 36-inch launch rod, that's pretty short for a big heavy rocket like this. I assume he flew it on a 98, an 8-foot long. Launch conditions, he has an altitude of 239 feet above sea level. He's in Massachusetts, so that makes sense. 8-mile-an-hour wind. And let's do a flight profile, see what it looks like. Where's the rocket? I don't see the rocket. Yeah, something happened. NAN. NAN means not a number. So it didn't like that. So let's try it again here. Flight events, starting state. So I'm changing it to 98. He said it was 239 feet above sea level. And let's launch. Yeah, it's still not a number. So we got a problem with this file. Oh, whenever there's problems with files, it's a problem. What that means is there's a component here that's giving us problems. Usually I start with the fins, double check the fins. So he's got the fins made out of birch plywood. That's okay. He's got a lot of mass objects in here, so he's doing everything right. So one of these parts is making us problems. And the only way to figure out which part it is to start deleting things and then see what causes it to work. So let's delete that. Yes, and then you run the simulation. Okay, still not working. And you go back here and you delete this. And then you run the simulation. Still not working. Let's delete the fins. Delete, yes, and run the simulation. Still not working. See that? Oh, I guess it did work. It actually did work because it went 574 feet. I was just looking at, I thought that was NAN. My eyes didn't catch that. That's NA for altitude at deployment, because altitude at deployment, it's not deploying because the parachute has no ejection charge to push it out. So let's open up a new design. Save my changes? No. Okay, so we reopened it up. Let's put the motor in here. Choose engine J435. I'm just trying to get set up first, right? And then we're gonna give it some delay. I don't know. I'm gonna give it like 12 seconds. Give the engine overhang 1/4 of an inch, because that's the thickness typically of the thrust ring on the back of the motor. Okay, so it loaded it in here. Starting state, 98 millimeters, 239 feet. Let's launch it. Okay, so it did launch. Okay, 574. He says RockSim calculated to 850. Well, I'd kind of trust that number. This is a big, heavy rocket. Yeah, this is what happens when people send me files and it's got 127 simulations and then they want me to debug it. And I don't know which one to work. So that's close. So when you send me files, delete everything from the simulations except for the ones you want me to compare, because I can't tell. To delete simulations, you just highlight them, do a right click, and then just select delete, and it will delete them. And so now I've deleted a whole bunch of them. You know, if I want to delete them all, I just scroll up. I'll leave that one. Oops. And then hit delete. So now I'll be down to 3 simulations. Let's delete that one too. This is the only one that I see that's even close. Okay, so right now it's using a value of 0.75 because it was unchecked. I should have saw that. Okay, so now let's check it and run that simulation again. So when we had it checked, let me delete this one so it's not confusing. So the first time we ran it, it went 574 feet, and that was using a CD of 0.75. Now, by unchecking this, now RockSim is going to calculate it. And we're going to run it again. I'm changing nothing, just let it launch, and it goes up to 640 feet. So you know, 60, 70 feet difference in altitude when RockSim calculates it. It's got such a lot of stuff going on here in this text. My question is, does RockSim overestimate simulated altitude checking the CD override on with bigger diameter rockets? It shouldn't matter what the diameter is, except if it's short and stubby. Because then you get a lot of base drag. This is going to have a lot of base drag just because it's big, but it's, you know, relatively long. You know, it's more than 10 times the diameter. You know, if you take 7.75, multiply it by 10, you get 77.5, and this is longer than that. So this is generally a long rocket. Yeah, the question is, how accurate is RockSim calculating it? And this goes back to the very first question we had: is RockSim a CD calculation program? And the answer is no. It's gets you in the ballpark. I mean, these numbers are, you know, in the ballpark. You know, it's not like 10,000 feet versus 500 feet. So we're in the same area. It's just, now you're looking for like precision altitude. So now what you have to do is actually go out and fly it. So he says, I did take the first flight with the J435 altimeter data recorded at 720 feet. So he flew it and it went 720 feet. So that went higher than this, which tells me that the coefficient of drag is too high. So we got to bring that down. So if I bring that down, let's try 0.5 and rerun the simulation. So now we're at 609, so we're still too high. So we're going to be probably like 0.3. Let's launch it. 641. Man, it's like this is a very low drag rocket. Let's try 0.1. I don't think we're going to get there. 679. I wonder if make it 0.01, make it like negligible. I don't think we're going to 698. So I can't even get to 720 feet on this rocket at that weight using that motor, even if there was no drag at all. So I think this rocket is just too heavy in its current configuration to get up to 720 feet. Now you have to ask, was the actual rocket built equal to that? That's pretty heavy. Let me ask Surrey. I gotta turn this off. I can't do that. I gotta do Surrey on my phone. I gotta convert. Well, here, I want to convert this mass here to pounds. To do that, go to Edit, and then Preferences, and under Units, change mass to pounds. Okay, so this is 23-pound rocket. This thing's it's a tank. Basically, what it's saying is that even with a J435, it can't lift a 23-pound, almost 24-pound rocket to 720 feet. But you saw what I did there. What I was trying to do was to adjust the coefficient of drag until I got to the altitude. Typically, a typical rocket, you start at 0.75. That's just kind of like our starting point. That's the rule of thumb. Start at 0.75, and then we either work up or down from there. So if your rocket is going too high, then you increase the coefficient of drag. If the rocket's not going high enough, you lower it. And then you lower it until it matches. So if I could get this number to match the altimeter, now I have that coefficient of drag pretty close. Like I said at the beginning of this episode, the coefficient of drag is not a static number. And what we're trying to do here is to force it into being a static number. But it's not. So let's run it here. Let's run it again and launch it. 640 feet. So this is like the first one again. If you go to plot over here and we plot, let's change the axis to wind angle of attack, and then we plot the CD. Let's clear this one. So on the bottom, we're going to have angle of attack. And when we plot the graph, let's see what it looks like. Okay, so CD is the blue line. So you see it's as the angle of attack increases. So basically the rocket started out straight, but it kind of went sideways into the wind. And that's because the wind is blowing out on the rocket. You get, I can't tell which is the launch and which is the landing. I think this might be the launch point down here, where my thumb is, where the rocket took off, and then it followed this curve like up like this, and then it bounced back and forth. That was because it's wobbling like this. The wind hits the rocket and it corrects it, but because of the inertia of the rocket, it moves it. But an object in motion remains in motion unless it's acted on by another force. And so now once it gets to this position, now the force is from the other side and it moves it back. And then, it continues to swing until it eventually dampens out and goes into the right angle of attack. So as the angle of attack increases, the coefficient of drag is increasing. So it looks like it's starting out right around 0.35, 36, somewhere in that area. And then as the angle of attack increases, That coefficient of drag goes all the way up to about 1.45, which is pretty high. So, you know, like 0.75 would be like right in here. And then at this point, I think the parachute popped out, and then we were just drifting downwards under parachute. And this red line is the velocity of the rocket. So I think what happened was the rocket launched here. It launched here, and it immediately, while it didn't increase in velocity here, because that was when it was on the launch rail, and then it came off the launch rail, and its velocity started climbing, and then it started wobbling and losing speed, and then it you know, it was losing speed, arcing back and forth until it finally started coasting. This is where the angle of attack started getting closer to 0, and then finally the parachute popped out here, and it dropped, you know, back down to 0 wind angle of attack. Until it hit the ground, and then it was back down at 0 velocity. Okay, so coefficient of drag is such a hard topic to talk about, and everybody wants to be so precise, and I understand that. You know, you got to worry about your waiver altitudes, and you can't break the waiver. So if your club has a waiver to 5,000 feet, your rocket can't go above that, or the club could get in trouble from the FAA. Because they have to keep rockets away from airplanes, and if you say I'm below 5,000 feet, then the FAA will have the airplanes fly higher than that, and they won't allow them to fly lower. So it goes both ways. He says the design is for the L1000. Yeah, this is what happens when you write long emails. I get confused. But what I said was right, is the way you do it, and you were doing it correctly, is you adjust that coefficient of drag until you can get as close to the altitude that your altimeter said the rocket was flying. And then fly the rocket, and the coefficient of drag should be, your predicted altitude and your actual altitude should be closer. And they're not going to be exact, because the rocket never flies the same way twice, because the wind is constantly changing, or you angled it into the wind or with the wind or in a different direction to compensate for the wind. And so now all your angles of attack change. So your altitude, like I said, your coefficient drag is going to change with angle of attack, and I showed you that on the graph. So if you make one small adjustment, you're going to get a different altitude than what you thought you were going to get, because you can never match your launch conditions in RockSim to what is actually on the field. You can try to get close, but it's not going to be perfect. Carlos says, will Apogee be selling an electronic recording device called the RockSim calibrator that gives us the numbers to get a correct CD? Well, they're called altimeters, and that's what we were talking about here, is you use an altimeter, but this is what a lot of people have asked for, is can you connect your altimeter directly into RockSim? And that would be really hard. It's not impossible, but really hard. One thing we would have to do is make a specific altimeter that speaks the similar language to RockSim. because the way data is stored on altimeters, every altimeter stores the data differently. And if you think of it like a spreadsheet, column A might be time and column B might be altitude, but a different altitude might have those reversed, or they might have acceleration in column A versus column B. And so RockSim needs to know exactly where, or a future version of RockSim would need to know exactly where the data is. And the only way to make sure is to have a dedicated altimeter that's designed specifically. And Carlos calls it a RockSim calibrator, which is not a bad name. So then it would input an altitude in RockSim, and then RockSim would have to have a little program that would adjust the coefficient of drag until it matched that altimeter reading. The easier part would be just, have that little algorithm already built into RockSim, and this is something that we are thinking about doing. That would create find that coefficient of CD override value here. It wouldn't be perfect, like I said, because every time you launch the rocket, it's different, because there's different wind conditions, different temperatures, different barometric pressure. Your launch angle might not be exactly the same. Where you launch will affect it. If you launch at the equator versus at the North Pole, that's going to make a difference in altitude. So there's a lot of stuff going on. Terry says TMI, which means Tim mentally incapacitated. Oh boy, I think it's gotten that bad. All right, cool. Newtons per second says the I-1000 was showing 2,900 feet or 4,500 feet unchecked by the CD override. Oh, that was not an I-1000, an L-1000. Okay, so choose. Let's unload that. Let's go here. It's showing 76 millimeter, but we can get show all the engines that are smaller. Let's go down to the L. So I'm just going to scroll down until I get to the L1000. JKL. Let's double check, make sure I'm seeing these in the correct order. JK, K, I'm not seeing an L1000. How come I'm not seeing an L1000? Oh, there it is. Plugged. Let's use 18. Click OK. Click OK. So there's the L1000. And we're going to let RockSim calculate it and launch it. You got 400 close to 4,500 feet. Okay, so that's what he says. And then he did a CD override and launched it. So we're using 0.75 and launched it. And he got 28, close to 2,900 feet. All right, so, okay, so that's just 2 data points. That's with a fixed CD and a RockSim calculated CD. But what did the actual altimeter say? Let's see. So we'll go into Rocket, and you can do a CD analysis up here. And this shows us, I want to go like Mach 0.5. So he's getting a maximum velocity of around 0.55. So I've got 0.55 and hit tab. And it's not calculating anything. Let's see. Oh, because I'm using a fixed number. So let me uncheck that, or check that, and then go back here to CD analysis. There we go. So if I go my velocity, if I go 0.55, okay, so it says that most of the drag is coming from the nose and the body, and we're getting some base drag here. About 32% of our drag is from the base drag, and then the fins create some drag, and the launch lugs is negligible. I'm just trying to figure out if there's anything that we can do. So this was, one was with the CD RockSim calculated, and this one was with a fixed CD. So maybe this is one of those cases where we're getting a lot of base drag and RockSim's not calculating it. Okay. And maybe it's shorter than I thought. Okay, so if you go back to the Apogee website and you go to How-To and Guides and go to Peak of Flight newsletter, go to all newsletters. What I'm looking for here is there's an article on this, and we're going to do a Control F to do a find. We're going to type in base drag, issue number 103. Let's see if this is the one. Determining base drag. Yeah, we used to have a program called CFD analysis, but that program died a long time ago. Let's go back. How do you get out of here? Let's type in short. Here we go. Stability. That's stability. Okay. Issues number 154 and issues number 158. I'm going to open these up. So this is issue number 154. This is an article written by Bruce Levinson, and what he suggested we do is to add a cone on the back of the rocket that will increase the base drag of the rocket so that it will match your altimeter measurement. And then he continues it in issue number 158. He says, do this for rockets with less than 10-to-1 length to diameter ratio. Even though this rocket is a little bit greater than 10-to-1, you might want to try this technique Yeah, I haven't read this in a long time, so I don't. If you read this article, it might help you out. And he says, I'm extending the Jupiter 3 and the RockSim file showing what it will look like soon flying on an L1000. Okay, so I don't know if this is the current configuration. He says he was going to increase the length. Yeah, he's talking about a new article. I'm not sure which new article. Was that, which article was that? Was it like 564? 563? Let's see what that article number was again. 564. 564. So he had the rocket and it was shorter. And I can't see what this is. It's really hard to read. Okay. This was 9,000 grams instead of being over 10,000. Okay, so yeah, when your rockets get short because of base drag, you know, do that technique in issue number 5 or 158. That's weird that it's shown as an InDesign file. Any other questions? Oh, this was written by Bruce, and Bruce unfortunately has passed away. He was great. He wrote a lot of really good articles for me. He was smart. He's figuring out. He was just playing with RockSim, trying to get his CD numbers to match, which is how he came up with adding a cone on the bottom of the rocket to increase the coefficient of drag. So what you would do is, you know, go down to the last component here and add a transition. And I'm going to cancel out of there, and the front diameter, you know, 0.01, the rear diameter, I don't know what he says in the article. It's been such a long time, but it might be 7.75. And then it have a length. You can see we're adding a cone to it. And you can probably make it out of, you know, something really lightweight, you know, paper, hollow, with a wall thickness of, you know, really thin, you know, so it doesn't add a lot of weight, you know. So now I'm adding 3 grams, and I can make it even smaller, you know. 1 gram, you know, 0.3 grams. That's like less than a paper clip. And then click OK. And then you do the CD analysis again. And we were at Mach 0.55. Hit Tab. My base drag didn't go up hardly any. Actually went down. Yeah. So you can play around with things like that. Okay, I got no more questions. We've been talking about drag today. It's such a hard topic to talk about. I'm doing a lot of arm waving. Chuck Garn says, Tim, checking in for the wife's hospital room. Is that from the wife's hospital room? I hope she's not, I hope she's doing well or getting better. Or if you're asking me what the number of her room is, I don't know. It's 4. Okay, Sturko3 says, what would cause a rocket build and then not showing up in the simulation window, no rocket visible to launch? What would cause a rocket build and then not showing up in the simulation window, no rocket to launch? So it's kind of like he's going to launch it. You know, he goes to prepare for launch, and he does a flight profile, and there's no rocket sitting here. If there's nothing showing here, then there's probably nothing here as well. And that's that issue of something is causing RockSim not to run the simulation. Because if there was a simulation, it would show up there. The other thing that you can do is to upload the design to the launch visualizer. Can I open the launch visualizer here? The launch visualizer is rocksim.com. Let's see. Can log in. Oh, good. My account is in this computer. Okay. You can upload a new design. I can browse for the design. And then he sent it to me and I put it on the USB drive, the Jupiter 3. Open. And then upload it. And this is a big file. And it's uploading forever because all those simulations add a lot of memory. And it's taken a long time to draw it. So there's the Jupiter 3 rocket sitting on the launch pad. This blue dot here, that's a mass object that's hanging outside the rocket. That's interesting. And then you can go and select the launch site. So I'm going to choose a launch site here. And he's in Massachusetts. I don't think there's Central Massachusetts Space Modeling Society. And it's going to load the map of where this launch site is. I don't think this is going to be a high power capable launch site. Probably not. There's a field there, but it's surrounded by a lot of trees. So I probably wouldn't launch there in Massachusetts. Maybe he's launching here. What's this launch site? Kearsarge Area Rocket Society. That's not much bigger. There's not a lot of houses, but there's still a lot of trees. And you would go to launch. We'll go launch straight up and give it a wind of, this is 5 miles an hour from the west. Okay, and then the motor, we're going to choose that L1000 here in the launch visualizer. It's not finding. There it is, because it's a 75. It's a 54, not a 76. And ejection delay, we'll say 18. Click OK. And deploy the parachute at max ejection, and we'll launch it. Confirm the launch site, say yes, and simulate. I think I chose that launch site. It's running. Let's see what RockSim Pro says. Okay, so there's a rocket on the pad. And whatever I picked right in the middle of a bunch of trees. There's a lot of trees in here. This is not a good launch site. That's in New Hampshire. Okay, well it's in the forest. Let me go to this view, and it will zoom back in. The rocket should be right here in the middle. And when we launch it, there it is. It took off, and it's going 1,800 feet, and it's still going up. It's way up here, and the parachute should be coming out right there. And now it's drifting down. Let me get a plot here. Let me see the path and extrude it to the ground. Okay, so there's our launch site in the trees. The rocket went way up. What happened to my cursor? Went way up to there, and now it's coming down, and it stays in the air 184 seconds. Doesn't like this USB device. Yeah, so that one's landing. Started in the trees and it landed in the trees. Not the best launch site. Okay. Any other questions? Terry Wheelock says, use an Apogee RC parachute. Yay! Newtons per second says he's launching from Amesbury, Massachusetts. Or Rima in Rhode Island. So, where's my cursor? I lost my cursor. My mouse has died. The trackpad still works. He says Amesbury. Let's try Rima. I'm not seeing Rima either. Anyway, but that's how you use. You could try it in a launch. If your rocket's not loading into RockSim in the 2D flight profile, try the launch visualizer at rocksim.com. See if it's working there. I do that just to troubleshoot something. You know, I don't know what that would tell you, but it would tell you that something's working somewhere. All right. I don't see any other questions. So we're after 3 o'clock. So I think we'll call it for the day. What's going on here? My computer's locked up. And I can't. There we go. All right, so yeah. Oh, we will be back next week, Friday. I think then we're into April already. What's the next Friday? It will be, no, it's actually March 31st. So we'll be back March 31st at 2 p.m. Mountain Time Zone. On Tuesday, the 28th, is when the level 2 comes out. This is only 7 pounds. It's not a 24-pound rocket. It's fiberglass in too, and it's heavy. But it flies really nice. It was like close to 4,000 feet on a J. I forget which J motor I used. It was a classic from Cesaroni. That was the first flight, and then the second flight, it was an I motor because it was getting late in the day and I didn't want to. It was dual deployment, and it actually landed 30 feet from the pad because, like I said, there was hardly any wind that day, which was really nice. So we'll be back. Thank you for coming. Thanks for stumping me and giving me TMI, which Terry says for Tim's is mentally incapacitated. That's pretty funny. Don't tell my daughter that. She'll start using it. All right. So thanks for coming, and